Welcome to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Kentucky attorney Jeff Roberts has over 25 years of experience. He'll provide answers to your questions related to personal injury and automobile accidents, workers' compensation claims, and Social Security disability benefits. Let's join Jeff for this episode. All right, friends, we are back in the office with attorney Jeff Roberts down in Calloway County, also with an office in Christian County up in Hopkinsville. Jeff, welcome back.
Hi, Jim. How are you today?
Buddy, I'm doing fine. So today we're going to jump back into Social Security. We're going to talk about continuing disability reviews, CDR reviews. Let's talk about that.
Yes, and I've had past clients that's called up when these have occurred, but continuing disability review, when someone is granted disability, Social Security disability, or SSI disability, either one, then over time, Social Security can and usually will review a case depending on how old the person is when they're granted. If you're granted at 64, they're probably not going to do a continuing disability review, but where they go back in and look at things to make sure the person is still disabled. And they call that a continuing disability review, basically, is where they go in and they make an initial look and see if they need to do more of a deep dive into it to determine whether somebody is still disabled or not. And so people get those letters, they get concerned over it, and I get phone calls fairly regularly about that and what's going on, what's this about, et cetera, from clients, which is very understandable. So
no, that makes sense. And for the listeners, let's just clear up this works for both the SSDI, which is Social Security Disability Income. That's for people who have been working, have a history of work, and then they've become disabled through whatever happens. They have Social Security programs that come in SSDI, and then SSI, supplemental security income,
correct,
which is somebody that doesn't necessarily have a work history. So in that case, a child even could, if they're born with a physical or a mental disability, they could qualify.
Correct.
For benefits, yes. And so that's why it applies to both sides. That's what you're saying. And
exactly.
I'll put links to that in the show notes, because you do have an extensive Social Security disability practice. But in some of the previous articles, some of the previous podcasts, we've talked about both of those programs and qualifications and things like that. So I wanted to kind of get some of those terms cleared up. So somebody gets this letter from the Social Security Administration and they get a little panicked, and obviously they pick up the phone and call you. Kind of what happens from there?
Well, and there are certain things that can trigger that letter, and that's one of the things I wanted to talk about from that standpoint. One is, and I see this frequently, and I have the conversation with a client when this happens, but a lot of times when a person's claim is granted, depending on the reason that they are disabled, if it is a condition that is expected to improve in the next year or so, then the judge, in granting the disability, can put in the decision that they believe that improvement could occur, and they recommend a review in 12 months or 24 months or something of that nature. And you see that sometimes in people who've had multiple had a injury to their spine, and have had maybe one or two or three spine surgeries kind of back to back because they didn't fix it the first go around. And then the judge looks at it and says, yeah, this person's been disabled for greater than 12 months and is still disabled, but hopefully this most recent surgery will improve the condition and the person may be able to get back to work in a year or 2 years. So they'll go ahead and put in the decision itself. We recommend that you review this in 12 months, 2 years, whatever they put in there. And that can trigger a review, obviously, because the judge is saying you want to review this. When I see that in the decision, I'll explain that to the client, obviously, when we're talking about the judge's favorable decision, what that is and kind of what they need to do from that standpoint. But that's one of the things that I see coming in from judges on at least a regular basis, and so those will certainly trigger a continuing disability review by the Social Security Administration.
And so it's not necessarily something that the client did wrong or improperly. It's just probably already been entered into the system. They've already kind of set that date or that expectation that we're gonna monitor this. And this isn't the government, the Social Security Administration, picking on that individual. It's just it's a limited amount of money out there, and they want to make sure that it's being used to the best purposes.
Exactly. And you see that, like I mentioned, the spinal injuries, people who have significant car accidents and have multiple injuries from that are disabled for a while, but then, 2-3 years down the road, they're hopefully improved significantly at that point in time. So any of those kind of things where the judge, when they are making the decision, looks at it and says, okay, the person's clearly disabled at this point in time, but this is a medical condition that is likely to improve in the next in a reasonable period of time, then the judge is the one who's kind of directing Social Security then to look at this a little closer and maybe a little sooner than they would normally look at it.
Now, when they're doing this review, is this a formal interview? Is this a set of documents? Is this go see a doctor and let the doctor chime in or provide input?
A lot of times you'll get a letter. The whoever's receiving the disability benefits will get a letter, and it will ask the person to fill out a form, essentially that are you still receiving treatment? If who have you seen in the last 2 years or year or whatever it is? Have you had any more surgeries, any hospitalizations, gone to vocational rehabilitation, and have you gone back to work and things of that nature? So they'll get a form that they will fill out and then send that back in, and then Social Security will look at that and then may decide they need to get the medical records. They may ask, in fact, they very well may ask you to sign medical authorizations, and also they can get access to those records to look at that. And then they will look at it and make the determination. Usually they'll look at it and say, okay, we may need to go a little deeper into this. They may look at it and say, clearly this person's still disabled, still getting active medical treatment for this condition, and that's the end of it, and they won't hear anything else for another 5 years, 7 years, whatever it may be.
And that makes a lot of sense. But that's a really good note for people to stay in touch with their attorney as they progress. Okay, hey, look, I'm going to see this doctor. I'm just giving you an update. I'm going to see Dr. Smith on this date. We're going to do this. Just so you guys have that in the record too, right?
Well, once the claim's over with, as far as it being granted, they don't have to keep me as updated on the medical treatment. But what they need to do is to make sure that they're still seeing the doctor if they need to be seeing the doctor. So you'll see people after they're granted, and the doctor has said, well, look, there's nothing else I can really do for you. But then if Social Security does a continuing disability review and they say, well, he hadn't seen the doctor and hadn't complained about his spinal issues for the last 2 years, then they're going to look at that a whole lot closer. So when you go in to see your family doctor, if the specialist says no need to come back in to see me, I can't do anything else for you. This, unfortunately, is what you're going to have to live with. Make sure you're still seeing your family doctor, letting them know, my low back is still hurting me. I'm still having a great deal of difficulty doing this. I can't mow the yard. I can't do all these other things that they used to do, so that when they do these these CDR reviews, continuing disability reviews, when they get that record, they can look at it and say, okay, yeah, he's still, even though he's not seeing a specialist, he's still having these issues.
It's still documented somewhere in the medical
Exactly.
record.
It's being documented, the problems that you're having from that standpoint.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, because I could imagine a lot of people are not as organized as they'd like to be, and some of these things can slip your mind. And you don't want to get into a situation where it looked like you were hiding information.
Right, exactly. You definitely don't want to hide any information from that standpoint. So, and obviously, memories fade over time.
Absolutely.
But usually on the conditional disability reviews, they are looking at it. Continuing disability reviews. When they're looking at it, they're not asking for somebody you saw 10 years ago. They're not going to go that far back. So, they're looking at the more recent medical treatment that you've had from that standpoint. And obviously, some people have memory issues because of their injuries as well, or because of their medical condition. So.
Now, are there other types of triggers? We talked about sometimes that those dates are going to be kind of entered into the system, so they just know, hey, periodically it's time we check up on that individual and do this CDR. What are some of the other triggers that may occur?
One of the things that you can see as well that can trigger is when you have when there's been a breakthrough in medical treatment. that has become kind of standard treatment now. Those can create, somebody who was granted based on a medical condition 10 years ago, and then they come out with a new treatment 5 years ago that has shown great improvement and improves people's lives considerably, then the people who have that condition could very well be subject to a continuing disability review to see if that person's had that treatment and if it's improved that person's condition. There's a lot of medical conditions that treatment has improved significantly. One that comes to mind is hepatitis C, which for a long time had no treatment and now is very, very, very treatable from my understanding and what I've talked to doctors about. And various other, there can be some immune system issues that there could be a new medication that's come out for that issue that's shown great promise and great success. Actually, I shouldn't say promise, great success. They're not going to look at it, at least from my experience, they're not going to look at it when the new treatment first comes out. They're going to wait until it is established that yes, this is improving people's lives. This is improving their abilities, and then they will start looking at those cases again from that standpoint to see if the people who were found disabled prior to that medical treatment, medical breakthrough, if they are still disabled, if they've had the treatment, if they've had the improvement or no improvement from it or whatever. But they'll look at those kind of cases to see if there's been any improvement to where the person can return to work.
And to be clear, the Social Security Administration can't compel that person to go get that procedure or anything like that. They're just saying, hey, did you by chance have it?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're going to look at it and see if you've had it and if that's improved your condition. To the point that you're now that you're no longer disabled. So
right, and at that point, ideally, you can get back to work. You can continue generating an income, and then there, at that point, may not be a need for either the same amount or of disability benefits or any disability benefits at all at that point.
Right, exactly, and that kind of leads to the one of the others, and that is if you do return to work, that can trigger. Now, as a general rule, and it kind of depends on what you're doing to some extent, but if you return to work and Social Security wants you to return to work, and frankly, and I tell people this all the time in the office, you're better off, from my perspective, physically, mentally, and financially working if you can work than being on disability. So if you can get back into the work market, you're better off doing that. But if you, and they have programs for people to attempt to return to work without it being used against them from that trial work periods, unsuccessful trial work attempts, things of that nature. So, but you got a trial work period, and if you notify Social Security you're going to attempt to try to return to work, and once you do that, and if you are working and continue to work for an extended period of time and are able to continue to do that, and earn what's called substantial gainful activity, which means you're earning above the level for Social Security, then they're going to, for Social Security disability, they're going to look at that and say, okay, and you're back at work then. So the chances, as long as you're doing good and still doing that, and it's usually you get 9 months or so on the trial work period to attempt that. So if you're able to do that, they're going to look at you at that point in time. And frankly, I've represented lots of people who've been able to do that and get back to work after some improvement in their condition, or they get retrained and be able to get into a different field. And then most of the time, they notify them that they're attempting to return to work. And then after they've been working for a year, they go back and say, look, I'm still doing this. I'm doing good. I'm going to be able to continue doing this, and the benefits are stopped. Usually because the claimant notifies Social Security, but if Social Security looks at it and they see that's going on, that's going to trigger a review, continuing disability review as well. And if you're doing that, you need to let Social Security know. You're required to let Social Security know when you return to work. So, and if it continues, if you're doing the same job, earning wages for right now, I think substantial gainful activity is around $1,300 a month. So if you're earning greater than that a month, and that changes from time to time, but if you're earning greater than that a month and you've done that for a year, you want to let Social Security know. But at least from my perspective, because if they find out later, they may come back and say, well, you were supposed to let us know this some time ago. You didn't let us know that, so now you owe us all this money back too.
Right,
so
right, and that's painful.
Yes,
that's very painful.
It can be,
especially when you're on a limited budget like that.
Yes,
and trying to pay your current bills and then pay back the money that.
Exactly, and most people's bills are based on what their income is coming in, and then all of a sudden you got somebody, the federal government coming in and saying, "Oh, we paid you $15,000 too much in money. You owe us $15,000 back." It's hard to even make payments on that, frankly,
right.
For some people without it putting them to where they're meeting their monthly obligations can become difficult. So it's better to let them know ahead of time so you don't have to worry about that.
That makes sense. Just as kind of a side note, if someone is saying, okay, Social Security Administration, I'm going to go for this trial work period, and you get about a month and a, or you get a year and a half in, and then suddenly you realize, I just can't do it. Do you have to open a new claim at that point?
Well, it depends. If the trial work period's over with and they've done and they've taken you off of disability benefits, then yes, you got to go through the whole process again. But that's the reason the trial work period is as long as it is. It's to make sure you can maintain for a period of time. And so if you tried in 3 months in, 4 months in, you realize you're not going to be able to, and you can't continue to do that, and you stop at that point in time, notify Social Security, your benefits will still continue. You don't have to go through that process again. So that's the reason they don't stop it right off the bat when you attempt to return to work and say, okay, you've returned to work, we're going to stop the benefits. You've got that period to try to make sure. It's a reason called trial work period to see if you can try it. It's a trial to see if you can do that.
Now, do they pause the benefits during that trial period, or are you receiving whatever earnings you're able to generate plus the benefits? Do you know?
What I've seen with my clients is they receive the Social Security disability benefits and the income that they're earning at that time.
Interesting. Okay, but again, there's a finite deadline to that program. It doesn't go on for years and years.
No,
you
cannot be on the trial work period for 5 years. No.
Well, I'm still trying it out.
Yeah.
See how I like it.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other triggers that are more commonplace?
One that I see, frankly, I wish Social Security would do a little better job on this instead of doing that. But one that you see as well is if somebody reports that you are no longer as disabled, if you're not as disabled as you once were, or reports that you're working under the table or something of that nature. Obviously, if you're working under the table, that's a problem. But where I see this come in, frankly, more than anything else, is when two people have a falling out. Could be a marriage breaks up and one's on disability when the marriage breaks up, and then the other spouse is irritated at the one spouse, and they call Social Security up and say, my ex-husband is drawing Social Security disability and he's fully capable of working, and or vice versa, the husband calls on the wife, ex-wife, and those things can trigger continuing disability reviews from there. And at least from my perspective, Social Security needs to look at that and take into account, okay, this person may have an ulterior motive.
Could be some games being played.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, it may be accurate, but as a general rule, if they were married to the person for 5 years when they were drawing disability and there wasn't any problem, and then 2 months after they break up, they're calling and saying he's no longer disabled, it's probably just hard feelings triggering that phone call as opposed to legitimate issue there. But that can certainly trigger a continuing disability review if they get a phone call like that.
And again, coming back to kind of how we set it up in the very beginning of the conversation, that means there's going to be a questionnaire that they're going to fill out, submit. It doesn't mean they're going to lose their benefits. It's just a review.
Exactly.
Let's touch base. Yes. Let's kind of see. We've heard this, but kind of how are things going? What's going on now?
Right. Exactly. That is.
But it is a hassle.
It can be a hassle from that standpoint. So that is another reason why these reviews take place, though, is from that standpoint. Another thing that can cause a continuing disability review is undergoing a vocational rehabilitation program.
Okay.
If you are enrolled in college, for instance, if you're 45, 50 years old, all you've done is 50 years old, all you've done is heavy manual labor. You have a spinal issue, and then you go to college, get a 4-year degree. Bachelor's degree, you've been granted disability. They're going to look at they very well that can trigger them coming in looking. Okay, you have greater skills now than you had when we decided this case. So while you were disabled under the standard that we applied then, because your educational level is substantially greater, or your vocational rehabilitation skills have improved, and there may be jobs that are within your physical restrictions now that you can do. And so undergoing those programs can cause and trigger a continuing disability review when you complete those programs.
Right, but as you stressed, not only in this episode but other episodes, which I know we've covered, if you have the chance to go back to work, I mean, really, it's better for you typically all the way around. Like you said, physically, mentally, emotionally. It's just people feel good when they're earning that paycheck.
Exactly, they do, and I've talked to people a lot in my office who have been disabled for a period of time, and the mental aspects of a disability, even a physical injury that's causing the disability, that weighs on people mentally, and I am not a psychologist whatsoever. But I've talked to psychologists, psychiatrists in my career over the last 30 years multiple times about these type of issues. And at least my understanding is that someone who has a life-altering injury and don't have a physical injury, and if they don't have a mental aspect to that because of the change in their life and the change in their work abilities, that's going to be that's the odd person. Not
right.
Most normal people are going to have some sort of mental issue or problem with that from there. So if don't think that you are having some kind of problems that other people haven't had. It's very common for people who've had life-altering injuries, career-altering injuries, to have stress, mental stress as a result of that, mental issues as a result of that, and even if once you get on disability, a lot of times it can be financially, stress can be financial from the standpoint of how am I going to pay my bills? Am I going to be able to keep my car, or lose my home, feed my family? Those are very, very serious concerns for people who've been injured. But even after you've been granted disability, your car wreck case is settled, and you've got money in the bank now, that you're not as concerned about those. There is a lot of people put a lot of self-worth, their views about their own self-worth, based on what they do for a living, and based on providing for their family, and based on a lot of other things that go along with working, and that still affects you even after some of the financial strain may be taken off because you hired me to represent you in the claim. That can be once those financial strains are gone, you can still have the mental aspect to that. So
right, and that's a lot of these life-changing injuries. I mean, they do sometimes require the intervention of a therapist or something. If nothing else, it's good just to get out and talk to a counselor, because you're going to have a period of adjustment, and it could be a long-term period of adjustment. Because again, men in particular, we take so much of our self-identity from the job that we do, or how we do it, or our ability to just provide for our families. And when that is limited, through some type of injury, I can identify very, very quickly with what you're talking about. I mean, it's tragic. I mean, it's much more than just the physical injuries.
Yeah, and I've seen it over my career where I've talked to people who've had these injuries, and they treat with, I've had some who've treated with psychologists and other mental health professionals, and even when their physical health may not improve, sometimes even their physical health can go down. From a mental health in a quality of life standpoint, in their satisfaction with their life. I've seen that improve with people significantly with people who've sought the mental health treatment versus those who would not, who were resistant to seeking mental health treatment from that standpoint. And it just, to me, it's an avenue that you have to help get you better mentally, and that, frankly, in mental stress can also be channeled into increased physical pain as well, because whenever you're stressed mentally, you tighten up all your body parts and things of that nature, and so it can aggravate other issues, physical issues as well, from what I understand from talking to doctors.
It's amazing how that's all interrelated, isn't it?
All interrelated from that standpoint.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jeff, as we begin to wrap up the episode today, are there other topics related to this continuing disability review that you want to address?
Well, one thing I do want, a couple of things I want to address from that, obviously, if they look at it and they say, okay, there's, you're still disabled, there's nothing for us to do, then everything goes on. You keep receiving your disability benefits. Everything keeps going the way it was before the CDR started. If they come in and they say, okay, we don't think you're disabled anymore, they'll send you a letter. If they do make that determination, they'll send a letter and say, we think as of such and such date you're no longer disabled, and so we're going. And usually you'll get 2 months after the set date. They say they're going to, you're no longer disabled by this date. You'll get a couple of months of extra benefits from that, but you also are given time to appeal that decision. And there's a very quick time frame, though, on appealing and continuing to receive your benefits. You can appeal within a certain time frame and elect to continue to receive the disability benefits. And if you do that, you will continue, even after that 2 months, you will still continue to receive the disability benefits until a final decision is made on whether you, stating that you are no longer disabled, because if the final decision is yes, you're still disabled, you'll keep on receiving those even into the future. And a lot of times, because frankly with the mail, it may be 5-7 days after the letter was mailed to you before you receive it. And unfortunately, I've seen times where the letter will be dated one date, where we've gotten things in here from where the letter is dated, that it was dated the 27th, and it didn't actually get put in and postmarked until like the 30th of the month. So you lost 3 days there. Right. And normally you've got 10 days to make that appeal to continue to receive the benefits. And my advice normally to people when that occurs is if if you're working, you're not disabled anymore, then that's fine, let it play out. But if you are still disabled, contact your local Social Security branch office. Let them know that you're still disabled. You want to continue to receive the disability benefits while the case is proceeding through, because most people can't afford to have that check cut off in that situation. And with that short time frame, being able to get in to see an attorney, when you call me, it may be a week later before I can even get you into my office, or depending on what's taking place at the time. So calling, getting that continuing benefits going, then reach out to your attorney and talk with them about getting involved to help you navigate that process for the Social Security to say, okay, yes, we agree, you are still disabled.
So if you receive the letter and they say, okay, we're going to cut off benefits effective 2 months from now or whenever, so you've got that 2 month window, and then you appeal, and that goes on for a little while, and they do decide, hey, no, we were right in our decision, we are going to cut off the benefit. Is there a potential they may have to pay back what they received during that appeals time?
There's a potential for that. You can ask them to waive it. And I've done that and been successful in the past in getting them to waive in those situations.
Not guaranteed, but it's possible.
Definitely not guaranteed. But if you can show, yes, you've spent the money. If you put the money in a bank account and they look at it and they're asking for $12,000 back, and you got $13,000 in the bank account, you're going to have to pay it back.
Right.
But if they look at it and see, okay, yeah, you were paying your bills with this, you don't have the money to pay us back, and it was a legitimate appeal to try to do this, then you can ask them to waive the repayment, and you hopefully will be successful. At least certainly hope that you're successful in that situation. You may be, you may not be, but it's going to be all fact dependent. So.
Right. And let me. This is the last question I have for you on the topic. If someone contacts you to go ahead and get your help through the appeals process, does that generate an additional attorney fee, or how does that work?
Yes, because that's a new case.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a new claim in that regard. So there would be a new attorney fee in that. Now, if the person has elected to continue receiving benefits, which I've had several clients do that in the past, then we will make arrangements, because normally my attorney fee in the Social Security claim is a percentage of the back pay that I obtained for the client, subject to account. And so if they continue to receive the benefits, there's no back pay to take the attorney fee out. So what I normally do is make an arrangement with the client then to pay a retainer and monthly fees or something of that nature that I will hold until the case is over with and the judge approves my attorney fee from that. But then I'll get involved in that regard. Then it's still contingent on being successful. If I'm not successful, the money goes back to the client in that situation. But that it's just a different way I have to do the attorney fee, other than taking out of the back pay, just because there's no back pay to take it out of.
No, that makes sense. Jeff, is there anything else on this topic for today that you want to address? I know we went down a broad list of things and kind of got through it pretty easily, I think, in terms of there are some things that are going to trigger these reviews. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a status check, and it may continue, or it may be one of those things that, no, I have actually gotten better and I'm getting back to work. So, it's legitimate one way or the other, but it's that's what you're here to do, is to help them through that process.
Exactly. One thing I would add is to be careful what you post on social media, because when they do start these reviews, they don't think that they won't look at your social media, because they very well may do that. And if you post something where you're water skiing, and the picture may have been taken 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, or 5 years ago before you become disabled. But if you don't mention that, they're going to look at that, and if you just update your profile picture, they're going to look at that and say, okay, is this guy water skiing now, or is this guy competed in an Ironman? Kind of facetious on that one, but still, I mean, what you post on there, if you post something you did a long time ago and you're posting it because you're proud of it, which is fine, no problem doing that, but mention this was a while back. It's been a while back now, but I had posted, I updated something, I can't remember, but it was a picture that was taken back when I was on vacation 3 years before. I had posted it on my Facebook page for whatever, and I had lots of comments. Oh, you enjoy your time at the beach or whatever, and all. And it's like, well, I did, but it was a long time ago, because I didn't mention it. I mean, I just updated my profile or something of that nature back when I looked young. And then I experienced that from my own perspective from that standpoint. So if you're going to post things on Facebook like that, be careful, or mention this was taken a long time ago, because you don't want them to say, all right, we're cutting you off because you were engaging in these competitions. We got that from here, and then we have to go back in and prove and incur attorney fees and all of that thing to show that was actually before you ever become disabled. To
prove you were right in the first time.
Exactly.
In the first place. So it's funny how the theme of what you post on social media comes up in so many areas of law, including personal injury with car wrecks, with workers' compensation, with family, all these other things. It's amazing. Social media can be fun, but just understand
that people are looking at it to see they're looking at it to see if there's something there they can use against you if you're involved in something like this. So
I'm with you. Good advice, Jeff. As always, I really appreciate it. Jeff, thanks for your time down here in Calloway County, and really excited about the opening of the Hopkins County, the Hopkinsville office for you. Not Hopkins County, Christian County, but Hopkinsville office for you. So again, just fantastic. Love to see the office grow. Love to see the practice grow. And, hey, we'll be back in about 2 weeks with the next episode. Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Jeff will return in 2 weeks. Until then, he invites you to visit jeffrobertslaw.com and follow his firm on Facebook. At the Roberts Law Office, you'll find a history of small town service and big city results.